Hi, I'm launching a mini series of expert chats which will help you grow your business and brand. Today's chat is with Darby, who is a brand strategist. We are going to talk about the importance of having a strong foundation in place, plus what is the difference between brand strategy and a logo or graphic designer and when you need them. But first, who am I? I'm Katinka, a Melbourne-based photographer and visual brand expert who helps unique small business owners show up with a strong visual brand that tells their story. I would love to welcome Darby to the chat. Darby is a brand strategist, pasta lover, and small business cheerleader, passionate about turning great businesses into irresistible brands. Hi, welcome, Darby.
Thank you, Katinka. Thanks for having me.
That's all right. Thank you for coming along. So I'm going to ask you a few questions that will hopefully help get to know you a bit more about you, but also give some tips to how you can create a strong brand for your business. So the first one would be, who is your ideal customer and how do you help them?
Yeah. So my ideal customer includes service providers. So I work with, finance experts, bookkeepers, designers, psychologists, all kind of service providers who have a really special skill that they want to share with the world. And they have been in business usually a couple of years and they have been winging it at the start. Maybe they did a bit of DIY, getting their brand to life. And then they've reached this point where they're feeling really disconnected from their brand and how they're showing up. Or they're ready for a change in their business. So they want to change their business strategy or grow in a new way or target a new audience. So it's either they're feeling misaligned or they're ready for change. And at that point, they're looking to refresh their brand, create a strategy for how they're going to take their brand along with their business strategy and take their business to the next level. And I guess for me, the brand side of things is helping you connect the amazing things that you do in your business with your audience so that you can make more money doing what you love. So that's my ideal client.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So it's very important that you have the right strategy in place and you're connecting with the right customers. Like one of my favorite sayings is that your goal in business is actually to repel the people you don't want. So it's kind of like the more unique you are, the way you show up, the better you are at creating that the customer you want and kind of pushing the other customers away. So it's a really important area. Why do you do what you do? Why did you choose this area?
Well, I really want to support the creation and the growth of small business. I love the small business world, and my family have always owned small businesses. And I really love supporting people who take the risk to leave the corporate world to do what they love. I think it's such a bold move to be able to do, to leave a safety net of an income to do what you love in your own way. And then, my skill set lies in the branding and marketing space. So being able to help people who have a skill, want to build a business, but actually being able to let people know about it and get clients and all of that kind of thing. Because, no one tells you when you start a business how hard it's going to be to get clients. It's not just a matter of making an Instagram account and then you'll just get 100 messages. There is so much strategy that goes into building a brand so that people can fall in love with what you do, getting it out into the world, and like what you do, Katinka, with photos and imagery as well, making sure that you are showing off your skill so that you can attract the right customer. So it is really overwhelming for small businesses to navigate that side of things, especially when they first start. It's definitely a challenge. So yeah, I'm all about helping the small business world thrive through the world of branding.
Okay, cool. So you said you've always had businesses in your past. I'm assuming that's your parents. What kind of business were they in? I'm just curious.
They've had a couple of businesses. The main one was an accounting firm at our local strip of shops my dad owned. And I just loved like on the wind because he was Linden and Associates. So he had like Linden all over the window. And I just like growing up, like, that's so cool that my name's on the window. And I think like kind of sparks your inner like dreams of wanting to do that one day as well. Like, I don't know, working in a skyscraper in the CBD, doing like being a small cog in a machine wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. I think like helping small businesses is really rewarding as well.
Yeah, my dad was a small business owner as well, I guess. So it's kind of interesting. I wonder how many people who fall into this small business space have it in their background. Like it would be kind of an interesting stat. I don't know. Maybe I should go find that stat
Yeah,
somewhere, or I could make it up.
I
I'm
I
like
think
100% of stats made up.
I wouldn't be surprised if there was a trend because I feel like it just seems a bit more normal for someone who's grown up in that space to be like it's possible, whereas a lot of people don't have, exposure to the small business world, which makes it a bit harder. So yeah, let me know how you go with that research.
I'll just go and make up my little stats somewhere along the way. Cool. And I guess that leads quite nicely into like, what do you do outside of business? Because a lot of business owners can get quite single focused. And the reality is if we work too hard, our brains kind of freeze but don't tell a workaholic that. But it's always good to have stuff outside of business that you do as well. So what do you do when you're not working?
Yeah, well, you're right. It can be really consuming. Outside of work, I love to travel. So I try to get away as much as possible. And I guess that's one of the benefits of being a business owner is that you can kind of own your own schedule. You can take your laptop away if you need to, and you don't have to worry about applying for annual leave. I always hated like doing the calculations of how much leave I'm going to have to get away on this holiday. So I think just having the freedom to be able to do that type of stuff is what I really love. And I guess, that comes back to what I value in my brand as well, is that flexibility and helping my clients. Like a lot of my clients started a business for the same reason, to have flexibility, some to travel, some to have a family. So I think it's a really common trait amongst business owners that having that flexibility and freedom is really important. So yeah, I love to go traveling.
Yeah, once again, we can go with a weird stat. I wonder what percentage actually get the freedom and flexibility once they start a business.
That's the thing. They say you quit your 9 to 5 to work 24/7.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. And this is why having a strategy is really important, because if you have a strategy that you don't want to work 24/7, or, like looking at how you're going to pull people in, you don't have to work 24/7 because you've got a strategy and things work. So it is kind of an interesting, if you know what you want to do, you can kind of work to it. If you don't and you just end up working 24/7, you get stuck in the roundabout of that as well, I guess.
Yeah.
Are you a reader, or I know you've got a podcast, but do you read or listen to stuff? What's on your agenda at the moment?
I do a bit of both. I do read a bit of nonfiction as a bit of an outlet, to get away from work sometimes. But I am reading a good book at the moment called One Thing by Gary Keller.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah, I've read that one, I think. I read a lot of books, a lot of those business books, and then kind of forget. Yeah. So I think I read it, or at least either that is on my list of things to read and I've never got to it.
Yeah, I know there's so many like amazing books out there, and I think if you read too many as well, or do too much personal development work or upskilling, it just becomes a huge blur. So it can be hard, but I really like it because it's all about the power of like focusing on one thing. Not like it can be, in terms of niching and specialization, but also with priorities as well in your business, like really focusing on one thing to power you forward rather than having a million things on your plate that you end up not getting anything done. So I think it's a good reality checklist. Let's pick one thing and focus on it rather than overwhelming ourselves, because I think that's where it gets a bit messy.
Yeah, and it's very true. And I think this is where strategy helps once again, because if you have a clear strategy of what you're trying to achieve, then you know that the things you need to do are X, Y, and Z, versus I'm definitely sitting in that space where I have definitely had a bit of a shiny syndrome like moment, I think, with the whole AI and all of this stuff. And I even did it before. I was like, oh, I should go look at that. I'm like, why? Why do I need to go look at that? Is that actually going to help me, like all of these extra AI things? Or am I just going to spend more time down a rabbit hole of stuff? And what do I actually need versus just learning what someone's teaching? So it's kind of an interesting, it's very easy to learn a lot, but not do anything. And I'm willing to say, I have gone through stages like that as well. So a lot of consuming, and I get the people do this, do that, and I'm like, I haven't done it. So it's like the One Thing book that was on my list. I'm not sure if I actually read it or if I just was like, yeah, I should do that.
Well, yeah, I definitely recommend it. And yes, they're right. It's like business owners have to wear all the hats, and you have to do a lot of things that you don't necessarily want to do or know how to do. So there's so much work that needs to go into learning all the things.
So what is the biggest issue business owners have when it comes to creating a brand strategy?
Yeah, so the biggest thing is that they don't actually know they need it. And I know we've spoken about this before, because a lot of people don't understand how important it is to have a brand strategy to help you create a brand that people, know, like, and trust. A lot of people, they're not getting leads, and they might blame marketing, or they might rush into creating graphics without actually doing the strategic work, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But yeah, the problem is they don't know what it's all about. They don't know how important it is. And that's why, important part of my business is trying to educate people on, the importance of having a brand strategy and how it can really help you amplify your message. So that is probably the main one. Most people don't know what it is until I sit down and chat to them about it. So that would probably be the main issue.
Yeah, and that's an interesting one. From that, like, what are a couple of key kind of trigger points that people who are listening might need to think about to know that they need a brand strategy, if that makes sense? Like,
yeah,
because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. I think that's a massive thing in business. You don't know when you start a business what you don't know about starting a business. Like, there's a lot of, you don't know things going on.
Yeah, totally. So I've noticed that it happens mainly when someone's feeling really misaligned with the way that their brand is represented, and it's not really aligning with how they are as a service provider. So they could be creating amazing services, having a meaningful impact on the lives of others, but their brand and what's seen online isn't reflective of that. And they're a little bit, I call it a bit of an ick factor, when they're like, oh, it's not me, I'm not proud of it. They don't want to send people their website. They start, ignoring Instagram because they're just not feeling proud of what they're putting out there. So they don't know how to really show up for themselves in their business and really show people what they're all about. So that is the main thing. In terms of alignment, it's also the fact that if your audience are misaligned with your brand, and if you're not getting new leads coming through and people landing on your brand and knowing exactly what you're all about, then that's also a bit of a red flag in terms of your brand is probably not accurately showing what you're all about. And the other thing, which I briefly touched on at the start, was if you're going through a shift in your business. So if you are changing your strategy, if you're offering a new suite of services, if you're changing your target audience, if you want to go, if you were targeting women and now you want to do the whole family, you are going to need to refresh your brand so that you are appealing to the new audience or the new stage of growth that you're moving into. So yeah, they're the two things. If you're feeling misaligned and disconnected, or if you're going through a period of change and really need your brand to help you show it off.
Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so because like there's been a couple of people recently who are, they've had a lot of different platforms, a lot of different bits, and it's like how one of them is how you put your 3 or 4 different bits into one, or whether or not they should be together. That's one thing that often happens as well. Or this whole personal brand, like your name versus a business name, can be a big one as well, and people change that, or how you change it. There's quite a lot of elements in that place as well. Like when people obviously entirely change, like if they were a graphic designer and they started to go and be an accountant, obviously they're going to need a new brand strategy. But like it's also more subtle than that. You'd be surprised though how much you see people, you go onto a website or something and you're like, like things like LinkedIn, and it'll be, I swear that person said they were an accountant, and on there it's like photographer. I'm like, okay, was that their past life, or is that where they're going?
Yeah, and that's it. Like having the visual representation as well to help people understand what you're all about. And that's a good example of the personal branding. Like some people move from personal brands to an agency, for example, or go backwards. I've seen a few people who have agencies and then they move to personal brand, and that's, you don't want that experience to be disconnected for your audience. You don't want anyone, being confused. Like, I thought they were this. What are they doing?
Yeah.
It needs to be a smooth experience, throughout a transition process.
Yeah. And I guess also just, I don't think there's any right answer to the question, but it's also often people struggle with, should I be my name or not? And I go through that struggle all the time. I have been a company name and I've been my name. I'm currently in my name, but it's like, maybe should I go to a company name? Constantly having this fight about what I should do. I think sometimes it's easier to work under your name, especially if you are the service and you are doing the thing. So like I primarily do one-to-one services with people, so it's me doing it with them. But one of the interesting spaces you have, especially like when people start growing, is that, well, what do I do once it's not just me? Like if I send someone else to do your photography, but it's under my name, is that weird? So that's one of those interesting spots where people start to think, should I change to a business name? And I don't know if there is a right answer. It's like everyone's a bit different.
yeah, I think it's so unique and depends on what your goals are as well. Like if you want to scale to have a massive team, then it should probably be a consideration. But personal branding also has so many benefits in having that personal connection. And I don't know, there are so many options out there for every industry. When you have a name that is well recognized as well, it can be really powerful. So yeah, I mean, I operate under my own name. I like couldn't think of a business name when I first started, and now I'm like, it just really aligns with exactly what I'm doing at the moment. And who knows, it might change in the future if I grow a team, but that is when I'll redo my brand strategy.
Yeah, or not. I mean, there's definitely big personal brand people who have a lot of people underneath them. I think, yeah, I don't know. I think it's a hard one. I think the answer is that it's got to feel right for you, but maybe
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't. Like sometimes it doesn't feel right for me. I think, oh, should I go back to like at the moment I'm actually working through a rebrand of my own, like doing my logos and stuff because it's been like 10 years and I probably threw it together when I did it. And people can follow along that a little bit as I do different things. I'll put them on my socials and stuff. But one of the interesting things is my name is quite complicated. So I've gone under my name, which is Katinka Kernett, and it's quite long. And so I do sometimes think, well, maybe I have at times been KK something. So I should go back to KK, whatever that is. But I'm not sure I want it to be just photography. KK, yeah. So then it's easier to go by name because I'm like, well, if it's KK photography, that's sort of pigeonholing me into just that one space.
Yeah.
Studio Katinka is a name I've got because I used to have a jewelry range which is sort of paused or stopped. I could go to that space. And so this is where it gets a bit confusing. So I think if you're confused, the easiest way to do it is just to go with your name.
And you have a unique, like beautiful, unique name. So it's like, it's not like you're Sarah Smith. So it's like you can use your name to be unique in itself as well.
Yeah, but it's a bit too unique. So the thing with it is that people might not be able to find me due to not being able to spell it. So it's because it's two big unique things. Like on some level, I'm like, I'd go down to Katinka photography, but there are actually two Katinka photographers no, I think there's at least one Katinka photographer that's in Tassie. Oh no, I can't be that because it's such an uncommon name, but apparently not that uncommon. So personally, I help businesses create their visual brand, including a small amount of brand strategy. How does a business know when they need your services instead of a graphic designer who will create a logo and visual brand asset for them?
Yeah, so the brand strategy piece comes before the design piece. So it helps you get clarity on who you are, what you stand for, what your brand is all about before someone like yourself can go and then create amazing visuals to show off that brand strategy. So it's things like your brand DNA, so your vision and your mission and your values. So why you do what you do and how that's important. There's that saying that people they don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So having that as the heart and soul of your business is really important to show it up in your strategy. And then getting clear on your target audience, knowing exactly who you're speaking to. If you're not sure who you're speaking to, it becomes really hard for a designer, as I'm sure you know, to create a beautiful logo that aligns with your audience. Because if you're not clear on what that is, then it's going to be really hard for a designer to help you communicate that. Another one is brand positioning. So knowing, who your competitors are and what makes you unique. And then another one is brand personality. So knowing, being able to humanize your brand and be like, if my brand was a human, what would they be like? Would they be funny? Would they be quirky? Would they be professional? Would they be inspiring? So really understanding who you want your brand, what you want your brand personality to be, so you can ooze that through your visuals as well as your marketing when you get to that as well. So I think it's just important to know some of that strategy piece before you go into work with a creative. Because, for example, if you're trying to create a logo for a personal trainer, for example, if you're creating a logo for a personal trainer who is training, young people to, complete a marathon in a couple of months' time, they're really, bold and strong and hard on their clients, and they're really gutsy, versus a personal trainer who is passionate about, helping women after childbirth feel confident in their bodies and is a really feminine personal trainer. So like those two examples of a personal trainer, although they may do similar things, the strategy behind who they're targeting, what they believe in, their personality is going to be very different. So you would be creating different like completely different logos, I would assume, for those two people. So there is a lot that, you know, a design team can benefit from strategy. But yeah, what do you think about all of that, Katinka?
I think it's very true, because otherwise, if there was no difference, every personal trainer would have exactly the same visuals. So the whole thing is like personally, I use color quite a lot. Color can be quite powerful. It's a really easy way to attract people. If there'll be lots of brands like Coca-Cola, we just know the colors of, like there's certain brands that we can draw the logos of, or we know their colors. Like people are more likely to know the colors than how the logo and their kind of visual assets play out. And color is quite powerful across a lot of different things. I'm a bit controversial with my color approach. A lot of people I have kind of three ways of doing color. So I do a lot of personal brand. So it's people who are the service, like, so they actually work with the people. So I say you have to like at least one of your colors, because you should wear snippets of it. And then there's an element where you need to work with a color that kind of works with your customer and they expect, and you cannot not put something that is kind of industry standard in it. And it's a combination of those things. But having one that you like really helps. So if you have like a feminine brand and you never wear hot pink, like you can't just have that as your brand color, because the whole point is people kind of expect to see that. We're not going to be orange Oompa Loompas if a brand is orange, but we can wear specks of it, or we can have it somewhere within what we do. So that's some of the things. And that means that every brand is different, because they've got different ways that they're showing up. It's how your fonts show up as well. Like, you know, you can have your really bold out there kind of fonts, or your nice light flowing ones, and they tell a different story. So all of those elements play a part. And then also how you do photography is a big part too. So you know, if you're going to be a marathon, like a hard, like, come on, let's do it, you're going to have kind of in face kind of photography and things like crossed arms and that more military style visuals, without being exactly military style, but it's more that space. Versus if you're dealing with children, you're going to have quite a soft and like you might have your arm around them, or it's just different kind of subtle things that people probably don't even realize play a part. If you're powerful in your industry, like you want to be, like crossing arms is kind of a powerful thing, or it can be seen as a negative thing. It's one of those weird, it depends who you're talking to. So in the masculine world, I think crossing arms is a powerful thing. I think sometimes when you're talking about females, it's has a bit of a negative connotation to it. So but it works for some people. Some people I photograph that way, and it works for their brands as well. So
yeah, there's a bit of like psychology around all of this, like what that actually means, and the first impressions that people have when they see your photo or your colors, and what feelings they have. So I think that's why it's important to do the strategy work and work with a designer to help bring your brand to life, and photographers, because they're able to tap into that psychology and what your audience needs to see in order to connect with you, you know, with first impressions as well. So yeah, it's an interesting topic.
It is an interesting topic. And and there's no right and wrong in any of this space as well. It's not, sometimes I think it'd be easy to be an accountant because 1 + 1 = 2. Now, most accountants will be like, it's not that simple. But I'm like, yeah, but 1 + 1 = 2. When you're talking about strategy and design and all sorts of stuff, like there is a bit of personal experience and opinions and a lot of testing, I think, too, that plays a part in it as well. What's your top tip for small business owners struggling with their brand strategy?
Yeah, it is a hard one sometimes to navigate on your own. So I think it's important to talk to someone, whether it's business partners or target audience, you know, people in your client database, just to make sure you can really tap into exactly what you need. It's like that saying, it's hard to read the label from it's hard to read the label from inside of the jar, because you're in your business so thick and you do it every day, but actually being able to step out of it and be like, what does my audience need? Or how are they feeling right now? And being able to have an outside perspective. So I think if you're not working with a brand strategist, even getting your business partner or having a Zoom with your, you know, dream client, and really understanding how you can help utilize their brain as well to help you really unpack what your brand should be and how you should be showing up as well. And we're going to talk about a little checklist that we're creating as well to help people guide through that process as well.
Yeah, it's so true. I've done a little bit of market research recently because I had a couple of ideas in my head. I'm full of ideas, but I was like, okay, I'm going to actually see if I can do something with them and what customers, how people have taken what I've requested is interesting, because what I thought was quite straightforward. Often you then get on the call and they're like, oh no, this thing was what appealed to me. Oh, that bit. Oh no, that's not related at all. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That was the bit I needed you to take notice of. Or versus you get really interesting insights into, I mean, another interesting thing you can get from that is what people see you as well. So another call I've had, I was trying to research in a certain space and we just ended up talking the whole time about photography because that's just what I am to her. And I was like, I learned lots from it. But I was like, but I really wanted to talk about this other thing over here. So
yeah.
But yeah, but I learned lots as well. Record them is a good tip if you're going to do that sort of stuff. You can listen back and you can listen to the kind of words they use, which can be quite interesting because often we use a lot of industry jargon with what we talk about, even when we say like visual branding and brand strategy and stuff. Logo design, people get confused. Like, what are all these things? Aren't they all the same? And so every industry has this kind of jargon language and other people don't understand it. So if you can get someone else to tell you in their own words what their pain points are, what their troubles are, who their client is, what their services are, or what your services are, then suddenly you get your clients or your customers' way of talking. So it's really powerful.
Yeah. And I think another tip might be to even collect all of your testimonials, if you collect testimonials, and highlight themes, and it might help you understand how your clients are feeling before and after. So it might say, oh, I was feeling stressed and overwhelmed before I worked with Katinka, and now I feel clear and confident. So really pulling out the feelings that people are writing when they're writing reviews, if you collect reviews, because that will show you exactly the value that you're giving them.
Yeah, and you should be collecting reviews. So no if, you should be collecting reviews. It's very easy to do it on Google. Just get your Google My Business if you're a service business, and you can send out links to people that are going to give you a reasonable review, and off you go. And if you're in a space that is more like food and stuff, then you'll get good and bad reviews, but that's all part of it. What do they say? If you've got five stars in a restaurant, people start to not believe you, because the reality is not all your customers in that sort of space are going to be so excited by your service, because that's just life. So a bad review is not always bad. It's how you reply to it, I think, is the answer.
Nice.
That was a little bit off track, but that's like one of those areas that is of importance.
Yeah.
Can you give me one actionable tip that will help small business owners define their brand strategy?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's a big exercise. It's not something that, will take 1 hour, but I think the first thing is to refer to the checklist that we're creating. Katinka will give you the links to find that, and it will give you literally a checklist of everything that you should probably know before you move into the design stage, or at least know some of it before you move in. And if you are completely unaware of any of the answers to the checklist, then it's probably worth chatting with someone and working out your brand strategy. If you have nailed all the checkpoints, then you might be ready to move on and go and work with someone like Katinka to get your photos done, to get your visuals done, and even your marketing, just to really start bringing your brand to life. So go check out the checklist and see how you go.
Yeah, cool. So yes, the checklist will be linked below or sideways or up or whatever, depending on where you're watching this. Go this way. And we'll give you a little, as we said, a little checklist. My thing is that if you're about 85% kind of there, probably most graphic designers, because that's kind of your next step, would be able to help you get the next sort of 15%. It's really if you're struggling in lots of spaces. So I always have a bit of a brand chat with people. I will usually ask them to answer a few questions. Mostly people put answers in them. But I guess it's about thinking about, is that just an answer for the sake of it, or have I actually thought that through? Because that's where you can start to not have that 85% if you're just like, everyone thinks I should do this. But like, why? Why do you do you have a reason why that's your target audience or why that's your service? And that can be where you can get a bit complicated and a bit thrown off, and it can be frustrating for people, because if you're in this space and you haven't really thought about it, and then you go through all of the work of getting logos and visuals and everything sorted, and at the end you go, actually, I hadn't thought about it, and now I'm in this space, suddenly all that work is a bit of a waste. So it's better to get it right before you go on the next journey, I guess. Saying that, we're always changing and moving, so sometimes that's just the way it works. And it doesn't matter how much you organize over here. By the time you get here, you realize you're in a different spot. But this is why we do refreshes. And, we don't always have to do everything from scratch. I work quite a lot on refreshing stuff. So adding a color, changing your colors, moving your logo a little bit can be all you need sometimes if it was kind of DIY at the start and it doesn't really work. But a designer might be able to go, well, actually, you've got the elements there, but we'll just do it like this instead. And suddenly we have a brand logo and we can do something with it, versus a thing that kind of looked like it had been made by the cat's friend's dog down the road. My grandmother's auntie's fish said she was a designer. She did, and I'm like, to fish design?
Yeah, that's so true. Sometimes it's just a small little tweak, like getting a designer to help with that can really transform the way you feel about your brand as well. It doesn't always have to be a complete 360.
Yeah. So yeah, the refreshes, and often refreshes are a good thing. Like once we go back to Coca-Cola, if you look at Coca-Cola's history, they've done brand refreshes that have cost a lot of money, and you go, well, they changed. They don't change much. They went from thick to thin, or thin to thick, or one sort of tint of red in a different direction. You're like, wow, that costs how many millions of dollars? So,
yeah.
Sometimes the smallest changes are and obviously when they do their $1 million brand refreshes, it's not just their logo they're looking at who they're talking to and how they can sit in the market and all the rest of it. But sometimes the smallest changes are the more expensive options in the world, weirdly. You go, wow, I need more of those jobs. Cool. So yes, as I said, the checklist will be, somewhere. And thank you for coming on and chatting with me, Darby. It's been a great insight into what you do, and something that a lot of my clients need along the way. And it helps me a lot with what I do as well when people have got that space under control.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Bye.